And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. A very happy Tuesday. David James sitting in once again. This is the DJ and Ben show.
Sure, why not? Let's do it.
Who are you named after? Where you get your name from?
Mom liked it.
Okay.
Yes.
Not Dad's name.
No, my dad was named after his grandfather.
Okay.
And didn't think that was a good idea. He didn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it didn't follow.
No.
Okay. I've worked with a couple of co-hosts who share the names of parents and fathers. Linear. Anyways. Christian, how are you?
This is some
Doing swell.
Random personal information I don't think I've ever been asked on the radio.
Well, DJ, now sometimes DJ is, obviously you're David James.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes when it's a DJ or an art, it's, David Jr. And I know that's not your name.
No.
I wondered if maybe there was something in there.
Nope.
D-double-J.
Yeah, DJJ.
DJJ.
Christian, what's your name origin?
Mom liked it.
Mom liked it. Same. Shout out to the moms out there.
Shout out to Mom.
Pacers fall behind 3-2 in the series. Looking hurt. Not looking like they're playing necessarily great basketball. 2-point game in the fourth quarter. They didn't push it over the edge.
It did feel a little bit like game one. Like, are they going to do this? Yeah. Are they going to blow a perfectly winnable game? And the answer is no. And I'm curious if the answer is no because they found some level of intestinal fortitude and toughness and they've learned something, or if the answer is no because Halliburton was hurt and he wasn't there to hit the back of the rim and have the ball go 10 feet in the air and drop in.
I think there's a realistic path that it's the
Thunder growing up.
Have grown up.
I think the entire, and we were actually talking about this the morning before the game, for all the things we get wrong, it's good to get one right once in a while. And I just thought, look at Jalen Williams. This guy, he's more points, more rebounds, literally every game.
Yeah.
He was so bad in game one, it absolutely drew my attention. Mm-hmm. And we've all seen players get on the big stage, and some players vastly outperform what their careers suggest they should do.
Yep.
And others don't really measure up to who you think they ought to be.
Yep.
And some do a little bit of both. And I thought, okay, so who's this guy? And you got to remember, it's 24. It's the first time in the finals, and literally every game has been better. And last night, his rebound totals didn't go up, but when you're scoring 40 points and you're wildly efficient, 14 of 25, good grief.
I do believe, and maybe where I have disagreed with some of the Jazz's approach to building this team, that iron sharpens iron, and playing in the biggest moments is when you do find out who your players are. Mm-hmm. And where the Jazz have backed away even from the threat of making play-in tournament games, or not play-in tournament games, in favor of draft picks, which I understand. And maybe, Taylor Hendricks ends up being a good player, and you feel like that was more valuable than learning, especially that first year, how good is Kelly Olynyk in the playoffs? Like, that doesn't matter. You're not going to win you're not going to have Kelly Olynyk long-term, so you don't necessarily need to win with him.
That would be the number one criticism, is they should have torn it down faster.
And maybe you tear it down faster.
They loitered as they tore it down. It took them 2 years to tear it down.
But I do think there are moments, even historically in the NBA, where I'd have to go back, but I think specifically Ja Morant beats the Warriors in a play-in tournament game to get to the playoffs. And you see, that's a guy who raised the level when the level was raised, the way Jalen Williams is right now.
It has to happen at some point.
And I think there is value in that. I don't necessarily know if you can go nothing to everything right away. I do think there is generally incremental steps.
I think the Thunder are doing what the Warriors did, which is one incremental step.
Yeah. And maybe it's just one.
There is 2 years ago, you're nothing. Then there's a year where you're in the playoffs and you win a series. Mm-hmm. You're not the team that goes in as the 8 seed and gets swept and then has to come back as the 5 seed. And Jordan really baby steps along the way, I mean, he literally touched every level on his way. Well, he didn't lose his first time in the finals. That'd be the one step he skipped. But otherwise, if you look at his postseason,
right?
Yeah.
A lot of early exits. And then some second rounders.
Well, they were an 8 seed,
And then
they
knocking
got
on the door a
trounced
lot.
by a 1.
Yeah.
They were an 8. They had nobody around him, and he went for 63 at the Garden,
Mm-hmm.
and the Celtics won the series quickly.
Did they win that game? The overtime game, right? I think they won that
I have
game.
to go back and look. It might have been a 3-1 series.
But yeah, the multiple crossover between the legs on Bird, yeah.
But the Warriors and now the Thunder out of the playoffs, in the playoffs with the series win, and then championship.
Well, you're not
If the
afforded
Thunder.
you're not afforded a 6-year runway to take baby steps anymore.
No.
So you do
And you don't
have
necessarily
to,
need it because you're not waiting for the big dogs to break down. They're torn apart by money and injuries.
right. So I do think you have to move a little bit more quickly.
Everything changes. Right.
Which becomes interesting for the Pacers runway. The Pacers have done this. They went last year. They did make the conference finals. 2 years ago, they were not in the playoffs because they drafted Jarris Walker 2 spots ahead of where the Utah Jazz were drafting when they picked Taylor Hendricks. By the way, Jarris Walker, not a part of this team hardly at all. I know he got hurt, but wasn't doing a whole lot. It's not the guy they're relying on to carry them to the conference finals, which I think is notable, and now the finals. But they make the conference finals last year, a little bit of injury luck. Everyone around them, Knicks are decimated. Can't remember who they beat in the first round, but they squeaked through. And then this year they make it to the finals, and then I don't think anyone's betting on them to get back next year. And maybe that's foolish, but I'll tell you the Orlando Magic aren't betting on them getting back next year because that's why they went out and
I
traded
don't
for
know that it's
Desmond Bane.
betting on them getting back. I think everyone. I think most people view the Eastern Conference as wide open next year. Whereas in the West, there's the Thunder. You have to beat those guys.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll end up, we'll see what Denver does in the offseason. Maybe it'll end up being, a couple of roadblocks. But that's what I thought we had in the East with Cleveland and
Yeah,
Boston.
right.
I don't think anybody's good enough to beat those teams over the course of a month and beat them both. And then it turns out you only had to beat one of them.
Yeah, this is not the beginning of the Kobe and Shaq Lakers championship run in 2000. This does not feel like the beginning of the Warriors run to me. And I recognize why the Warriors might have
Thunder?
this. For the Thunder, I recognize why Oklahoma City would have this long pathway. I just really have questions if it's sustainable.
Well, I think that they have a 3-year pathway. This is the first of 3. And the next 2, they can keep this group together. After that, contracts are up. And if they've won, then guys are going to get paid elsewhere.
Yeah.
And they'll get pulled apart.
And we'll want roles. Guys want to play bigger roles elsewhere, too.
100%. Now, Oklahoma City has stockpiled draft picks. Maybe they can fill in behind these guys.
But
We'll
we
see.
know first and second year guys aren't ready to help you win. Even the best ones. Even if you hit on your draft picks.
But maybe they're moving those draft picks to get veteran players who are ready to win, who are priced right.
But the priced right is the key there. And
It
that's
is
hard to get priced right, guys.
It is hard to reinvent a dynasty, and maybe that word gets overused, on the fly. Most of the time, there's a core group. The Bulls had a core group, had 2 years with Jordan gone, and came back with an almost completely retooled group.
Yeah.
Like the guys who won the first 3 didn't win the next 3. I mean, Jordan and Pippen were there.
Right.
But after that, Rodman wasn't there for the first 3.
Right.
Steve Kerr wasn't there for the first 3.
But you get B.J. Armstrong, Ron Harper. Maybe B.J. was
Whole
the first
different group.
half.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you get Ron Harper, et cetera.
The Lakers, when they went 5 with Magic, did make a couple of big personnel moves and retool. It did look like they were done. And they went out and got, I think it was Michael Thompson.
Yeah.
They got somebody else. And so they retooled on the fly. And they had draft picks stocked. They didn't have Worthy when they started winning. I think Worthy won 3 titles. I don't think he won the first 2.
And that's where Oklahoma City could be interesting.
Right.
Ray, run it back next year, obviously. They're going to keep the same team together. They're not going to do anything crazy. And I think they're going to win the title, and rightfully so. You run it back with that roster. And then a year from now, let's say you fall short and Giannis does officially hit the trade market, you have all the pieces to get him.
Yeah.
You have an expiring
who's to say?
contract in Isaiah Hartenstein and
Yeah.
some young player that you feel like, well, Chet was great that 1 year but didn't live up, but still has some potential in all these draft picks.
So you're saying there's a chance.
There's definitely a chance. Then again,
That's all you really have, though, is a chance. I mean, there are no locks. I mean, Jordan was a freak, and he did the 2 3-peats. But you look at LeBron. He had a lot of chances, and he cashed in on 4 of them in very different places and circumstances.
Yeah.
Did get the 2 back-to-back in Miami. And then look at Tim Duncan, who won 5 times and never went back-to-back.
right?
Ever. Not even one time.
They made I think they only made the finals back-to-back once.
And then look at Dallas, where Nowitzki finally figures it out after a decade of just playoff torture. And they decide, we're going to break this up and we're going to reload. And they never come close to reloading.
Right.
So everybody's got their own script. It is hard to reload on the fly.
And I think that's an interesting point of everyone having their own script, because I think when you look at teams who try and emulate other teams,
good luck.
I honestly was thinking about it this morning. Has anyone ever done it well? Has anyone ever recreated a different championship team in a different market and won? Has anyone ever won with somebody else's formula?
Take the exact same blueprint and just copied it?
And I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
There are cultural aspects that have been stolen. Famously, the Spurs and Greg Popovich stole a lot of what Jerry and the Jazz did.
Yes.
And modeled their team after that.
And Jerry West with the Lakers, the Kobe Shaq, there were a lot of parallels to Magic and Kareem.
Okay.
There were a lot of parallels there.
Okay.
But that's the same guy, the same GM, and the same organization. So really...
No, that's interesting.
It's his plan.
You've got the dominant center.
That's my model.
You've got the dominant center who had been to the finals before. Now, Kareem had won one before Magic, but he won it in Milwaukee.
Right.
But then, yes,
but he won it with the same model.
Guard.
He won it with an elite point guard.
He does. He brings in the hot young guard.
There was a debate once upon a time, who's the better point guard, Magic or Oscar Robertson? Mm-hmm. And I said Magic. And at a shoot-around a day or two later, Kevin O'Connor stopped by and said, it's Oscar. Huh. He says, you're not old enough. You wouldn't know. Huh. Which is exactly what MJ people say to LeBron people. You're not old enough. You don't know. Right. Everybody's a little bit a prisoner of their own time. But Jerry West's model is based on his model when he was a player. He couldn't win. They got to the finals and got beat until he got willed. Now he's the elite guard with the elite center. Championship.
And the Jazz did a pretty good job recreating Stockton and Malone with Darren Williams and Carlos Boozer. Better than I think we gave it credit for.
They did.
And I get that they didn't have the aura, and neither of those players are Hall of Famers. But
they didn't have the long run here.
But they were extraordinarily effective at their best, with a third guy, not named Jeff Hornacek, but probably Mehmet Okur in that sense, who did some similar stuff. It was a pretty good recreation.
But again, that was Frank Layden, Jerry Sloan, Kevin O'Connor, who all come out. I mean, they're basically the same. If you do the coaching tree, front office tree, it's like Jerry West. This is the reason it was recreated, because it's the same people with the same mindset.
And the championship that Danny Ainge won came after he had one of the worst rosters in the NBA, and they slipped to 5, and he made some changes. I don't see that happen.
But see, I think that Ainge's theory about there's not a plan, there's, the plan is to be opportunistic and wait for the opportunity to present itself. Well, across NBA history, that's what's really happened.
Yes. And
when the Lakers win the last 2 with Kobe, the weird thing about Kobe's career is he did the least winning in his prime. He won early.
Right.
Well, of course, they had Shaq.
Right.
And Kobe was figuring stuff out faster than most people figure stuff out.
Right.
Maybe that's the SGA. If you're looking for an SGA Kobe thing, that's what they have in common, right? And then at his peak, Kobe's fighting to be the 8th seed. And then later, when he's starting to age and mere mortals might have lost it a little bit, he still had it. And they bring in Gasol, and it's 3 more trips to the final, 1 loss, and 2 victories. Yeah. And then finally his Achilles goes. Yeah. Because
Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah, Father Time is undefeated, and he played a gazillion minutes. So there are different ways to do it, and I don't know that anybody else missed that much in their prime. And Kobe's prime, the team wasn't they went through coaches because they had the falling out with Phil, and Phil left. They went through other people, and they bring Phil back, and they patch things up. Phil, are you sorry about writing that book about me in the back of the bus?
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
My gosh. Well, the unwritten code just got thrown out the window because Phil's writing a tell-all book in the back of the team bus. What? How is that acceptable?
So I'll be curious to see, coming out of these finals, and what is rumored to be a very busy next week in the NBA, because a week from tomorrow is the NBA draft, and as Brian Windhorst on ESPN had said, he thinks it's going to be an early off-season for the NBA, meaning that a lot of the moves that would generally get made in early July will be made before the draft, a la Kevin Durant necessarily.
But isn't that just because players have signed extensions and it's not free agency, it's trades, and
Yes.
a lot of the trades around the future and the inexpensive player that you get in the draft that you control for 5 years. And
Yes, because free
That's it.
agency is just dead in the NBA.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
one
we used to
team
wait for
has,
July 1 for free agency, and now it's going to be draft night trades. Move it up a week early.
free agent. One team has free agency money. It's the Brooklyn Nets. Nobody wants to go play in Brooklyn, so who cares? And no one's hitting free agency. Unless you just want to cash in, unless you just want to
Why
be...
does no one want to go play in Brooklyn?
They have a history of not being able to maintain anything. I mean, and look, the guys who are respected in the NBA, which is like Kyrie Irving, who is weirdly beloved in the NBA. And actually, you know what? I like his recent maturity. I like that he went to Dallas, and maybe he just realized it was his last stop and he couldn't continue to be nonsensical. But I do like that he seems to have turned a new leaf. I like that about him. And players really respect Kyrie. And he's apparently quite a good leader. I don't think he's ever had anything good to say about having played in Brooklyn. I don't think Kevin Durant feels like he had anything good to say about Brooklyn. I don't think James Harden feels like anything good to say.
You've got 3 veterans
Yeah.
who have come out and told the rest of the NBA, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't go there. Yeah. So if you're Nickeil Alexander-Walker and you hit free agency and you've never truly cashed in and you want to get your $30 million contract, 30 is probably high for him, but he's a good player in the NBA. Maybe you go sign for 20 in Brooklyn, a la George Hill signing with the Sacramento Kings.
So you hold your nose and take the money.
And then you hope you get traded a year later, right? I mean, that's exactly what George Hill did. The Jazz weren't going to give him as much money as he wanted because he had a bad toe. So he signed in Sacramento and got traded to Cleveland a year later to go play with LeBron. And that's not a bad pathway if you can grin and bear it for a year in Brooklyn. And you know Brooklyn's not going to be close to winning, so your contract's going to be worth trading.
Ben, for $20 million, what could you grin and
Where wouldn't I live?
Right?
Yeah. There's a couple places.
No, I don't believe you.
There's a couple places right now I wouldn't be willing to go for $20 million.
For $20 million.
$20 million, yeah. There's
For
a couple
$20
places.
million.
There's a couple places on the planet, I'm saying.
Oh,
not
on the
in the
planet.
U.S. Yes.
Oh, I was in the U.S. I was in the U.S. Okay.
Yeah. Internationally, a couple
Okay,
places.
if you don't want to throw yourself into the middle of some place where there's a lot of violence and death and there's bombings and I get that. Yeah, if you don't want to go to a war.
Right. But
Okay.
US?
Now I've got you. Yeah, I was like, where are you not going
Yeah,
to?
of course,
Like you're not going to Buffalo? You're not going to Cleveland?
No, I'll go anywhere in the
You're
US.
not going to I didn't know. I was trying to think of like what city wouldn't you go to?
no, and then
Of course I was sticking with sports cities that people dump
well,
on.
that's the other
it
thing.
It could be small town.
You're talking about what are there 26 professional cities in the world or in the United States? Maybe 40.
No, there's 40 to 50.
Because I'm thinking just basketball, and there's 26 or whatever.
Oh yeah,
but
there's 30 teams in
yes,
28
if you
cities.
want to bring in Green Bay and Buffalo, we're getting up to 40 and 50.
Right.
But yeah, of course, anywhere in the U.S. for $20 million,
Yeah, it's
$1 million.
middle of nowhere, Montana.
Yeah.
Done.
Right.
Living on some mountainside, hour drive from everybody.
And
Ben
someone,
Anderson, the hermit, for $20 million.
someone will do that for Brooklyn. Somebody will sign there to make their money. But these guys don't hit free agency, and understandably so. And everyone who does hit is a restricted free agent anyways, or they're not so valuable that you wanted to stop them from getting to free agency in the first place. So that's why you do have some pathway for a team like OKC to keep it together because nobody's hitting free agency for them. They don't have to worry about people defecting and losing bodies and someone being able to get paid. They just get expensive internally, and then they have to moves to get off of players. But they're achieving their goal. I mean, their whole plan, which is, go back to the Derek Favors trade. That is, I don't want to say it's haunting the Jazz, but it's certainly hanging over the Jazz.
I would say the two things that have gone wrong in the rebuild are the Favors trade, and when they have to give up the picks, turns out to be years. You don't want to give up the picks because it turns out there's a lot of good players. Well, there's a lot of good prospects.
Yeah.
We'll see if they turn out to be good NBA players. But there's a lot of good NBA prospects. So that's haunting them. And I just think they tore the team down slowly. It took a year and a half, basically 2 years, to tear the thing down. And I get that that's how you get maximum value for the pieces you have. But
Is that the right prioritization?
yeah, that just drags it out.
If you end up trading Lowry for a Desmond Bain-like trade package and you get a draft pick back that ends up being a future number one pick, yeah, it's worth it. But I do think it's worth noting that, when OKC, you look at the picks that OKC has used and the players they acquired to get those done, it is not as dramatic as what the Jazz have had to do. It is taking on Al Horford's contract. It's taking on, whatever these kind of one Derek Favors contract for a year or two. It's generally these kind of one-off, 1 year bad deals, 2 year bad deals to let other teams continue to compete. And the Jazz haven't been able to mimic that as much as I think that might have been part of the concept. And yes, wanting to maximize the value for Kelly Olynyk or Mike Conley.
I was thinking Mike Conley especially because it was just so clear to me if you're tearing it down, you have to move Mike Conley. And it's obvious. Mm-hmm. And it took him half a season.
Yeah. And it was the year that you wanted to tank because now you're looking at the players in that draft who have stepped up and are playing particularly well. Amen Thompson or obviously Victor Wembanyama are the big difference makers.
Obviously. Obviously big. And the Pacers and the Thunder were both in the lottery for 3 years and then started their path back.
In fact, were they both in the lottery that year?
They were both in the lottery 21, 22, and 23.
So, yes, they were both in the lottery that same year the Jazz were in their first lottery.
The Jazz first lottery was their third and final. And the Jazz, when they were doing their second one and just completing the teardown, they were in the second and third rounds.
Yep.
Winning 1 and 2 playoff series.
Yep.
After a 3-year rebuild.
David?
So it's dragging on a little bit. Let's go.
Thanks for hanging out.
You're welcome.
Top 3 stories coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hey, bro. You hear us every day with our crazy opinions.
Hey, what you doing?
Well, now it's time to hear from you.
Hey, great show.
Download the KSL Sports app and fire off your thoughts with the call-in tab on the bottom of your screen.
Your show is fantastic. It's the one that captivates me the most.
You can tell PK to stop singing.
G-Bang!
Let Jake and Ben know what you really think of the Jazz.
Woo!
Tell Hans and Scotty about your favorite barbecue spot or what color of tie JJ should be wearing on TV. The best entries will be played on the air. Download the KSL Sports app now and hit the call-in button to let your voice be heard.
I think you guys do an incredible job.
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Do you have a product that you're passionate about? Would like to have it endorsed by our show? It's simple. All you have to do is text JB to 57500. That's JB, Jake and Ben, JB to 57500. And our staff will take care of the rest. Again, JB, 57500. If you've got a product you're interested in getting the word out about, we'd love to help you. Text JB to 57500. It's time for the top 3 stories at KSL Sports. Brought to you by our friends at J. Brooks Jewelers. Cherish your loved ones with J. Brooks Jewelers. Explore our expertly crafted engagement rings made from the finest materials. jbrooksjewelers.com or 2 locations up and down the Wasatch Front. Christian, where are we starting?
Number 1, well, Ben, every year it seems like somebody slips in the pre-draft process. This year it looks like that's Ace Bailey.
Some of it's real, some of it's fake. Cam Whitmore notoriously was kind of locked into going number 4 overall to the Houston Rockets, and I think slid to number 20. Did not. They ended up picking Amen Thompson, and they ended up getting Cam Whitmore far later in the draft than anyone had predicted, and slipped past the Jazz 2 times. And it was because their lack of information on his health, and then a really poor workout run that he had. According to ESPN's Jonathan Givony, formerly of Draft Express, this is what he had to say about Ace Bailey. Bailey's pre-draft workout strategy has perplexed some observers, as he has yet to conduct a single known workout to date, having declined invitations from several teams within his draft range. Sources say Bailey's camp has informed interested teams that they believe he's a top 3 player in the draft, but also seeks a clear pathway to stardom, perhaps feeling comfortable that a team will trade up to get him at number 3 or 4 should he drop. Some teams question whether he has received assurances of being selected by a team currently outside the top 5. So this is lying season. Famously, I've had, Jazz scouts and people tell me, don't believe anything right now. This is where teams leak things to media members to try and get players to fall. Agents leak things to try and get their player drafted higher. It's weird. It's dirty pool, and you're going to see it throughout. And it does seem like Ace Bailey is pretty primed to be the player that you would do this about. Usually this happens to the player that is already a bit
controversial.
Controversial is a little bit the wrong word. Polarizing. Cam Whitmore was polarizing coming into the draft. Great scorer, good with the ball in his hand, might have had the worst assist rate of any projected lottery pick in recent memory that was a guard. Never passed, and was polarizing as a result. And played at a smaller school, and those things worked against him. And he ended up slipping as a result. But there was all this noise about him as well, but it came out 2 days before the draft, and he went from being the 4th pick to the 9th pick to the 20th pick. Ace Bailey is extraordinarily polarizing. First of all, he was listed as being 6'10" at Rutgers. He's 6'7.5". Now you put him in shoes, and he's closer to 6'8", 6'9". His shot making is awesome. It's as good as you're going to find. It's as good as Trey Johnson in this draft. He doesn't hit them at the same rate, but the difficulty of shots he takes at his size will translate to the NBA. And if everything comes together and the stars align, he can be a true superstar. And honestly, could be the best player in this draft because he might be the one guy who could average 30 in this draft. He has that type of potential. I don't think the comps to Tracy McGrady are accurate. I don't think that's who he is. He's certainly not Kevin Durant, which are the comps. But he takes the shots that those guys took, which is a guy up in his face, all over him, perfect defense, doesn't matter. The ball just goes in because he's big and he shoots over you and he has the audacity to shoot it. So he is primed to be this player that these are going to leak about because he could drop 3 or 4 spots. And we know Cooper Flagg's not dropping and we know Dylan Harper is not dropping. So then you go to the next guy on this group and he's number 3. And so that makes sense why he would be in this conversation. I do recognize the idea that Ace Bailey may view himself as the 3rd best player in this draft. That's how most people felt coming out of high school. Some people even thought before Cooper Flagg did what he did that he might be the best player in this draft. That he wants to go to a place where he's not going to be a complimentary player. And he's going to have a pathway to stardom, which means a lot of reps early. And Philly is the worst spot for him, period, if that's the case. And they've got the number 3 overall pick. So he may be specifically not working out for the Philadelphia 76ers, even though reportedly he has a workout scheduled with them later this week, because he doesn't want to go and play behind Paul George and Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain and all these other good players that they have, because he wants to have a lot of opportunities to develop. And if he feels like he doesn't get that opportunity, he's never going to become a star. And if you don't become a star, you don't sign a $250 million contract. So I actually understand that from his camp. I would also tell anyone listening, and there's a couple of pathways we can go here. First of all, workouts are fickle. I have attended a lot of workouts. Jazz don't let you attend them anymore. Maybe this is the reason. But, and then by saying attending workouts, we get to go and see the last couple of minutes and then talk to the players and talk to the Jazz scouts. I remember specifically Anthony Simons working out for the Jazz. And the report I was told at the time was that it was one of the worst workouts the Jazz had seen. He was uninterested. He was lazy. He had his hands on his knees the whole time. He was not going through it with any energy, any excitement. He goes to the Portland Trail Blazers in the 20s. He's still in the NBA and he signed a $100 million contract. Like, okay, he had a bad day. Well, whatever. Who knows? I don't know why he didn't work hard when he was here in Salt Lake City. Maybe he was in Indiana the night before, or maybe he was in Denver the night before, or maybe he was in Portland the night before and had a hell of a workout and then just didn't have it the next day, or maybe he was under the weather, or I don't know. But if you're going to base a player's future entirely off of a single draft workout or lack of a draft workout, it's bad work. That's a bad way to approach it. Now, if you get a guy in and he's an idiot and he's awful and he's full of personality red flags, I think that's one thing. From what I've heard, that's not the case with Ace Bailey. I think he's very young. I think there might be some immaturity there. I think he might be getting bad advice. I think he might have been getting bad advice coming out of high school, hence going to Rutgers for the money instead of trying to go to a place that's actually going to display what type of player he could be in the NBA as opposed to playing in a wide open circus of a program like what we saw at Rutgers last year that did let him do whatever he wanted to do, sometimes with a lack of restraint that may have hurt him. And that might be a flaw with how he's chosen, and you hope that doesn't follow him to the NBA. If you're an NBA team, though, I think you better believe, especially if you're a bad NBA team, who's going to be drafting a top 5 pick. And top 5 picks are going to have egos because they've already made $2 million, if not more, coming into the NBA, that you can control these guys and you can put them on the right track and you can develop success in them. So if you're the Utah Jazz at number 5 and you say, we don't think we have the ability to break that horse and train him, then you might have the wrong people there. And here's the thing, I don't think the Jazz feel that way about themselves. There are guys the Jazz would pass on if they had enough red flags, certainly. And you should. You have to know what you're willing to put up with. But if you want a star and you think Ace Bailey can be a star and you think it's just going to be about working with his personality and developing him and growing him into, a model NBA player and putting him around enough other guys where he can learn how to play the right way, great. You take a swing on that guy. So if I were a Jazz fan right now and Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck and now Austin Ainge have Ace Bailey at 3 or 4 on their board, and he's there at 5, you have to draft him. I don't care if he slips. I don't care if he didn't work out for Philly. You know what might be a green flag in all of this that people aren't talking about? Maybe he doesn't want to work out for the Charlotte Hornets. Neither do I. The Charlotte Hornets are awful. It's an awful organization. They take good players, they take interesting players, and they ruin them. And if he says the worst thing that could possibly happen for me, and maybe this is his agent being smart, is going to a place like Charlotte where they will let you do whatever you want, which is what they did with LaMelo Ball. And it hasn't worked out in the slightest. He's talented. I don't know how much better he is today than the day he stepped into the NBA outside of the fact that he's been playing against better players. Without any real guidance, without any real red tape and restraint that puts you in a spot to being a winning player. And yeah, you get paid, but it doesn't matter. And maybe Ace Bailey's team is looking at number 4 and saying, we're not working out there. Yeah, that's in our draft range. We're not working out there. And we're not working out at 2 because the Spurs aren't going to take us, and we're not working out at 1 because Dallas has taken Cooper Flagg, the obvious number 1 overall pick. So we're looking at 3 at Philly, which doesn't have a pathway to me to being a star. And 4, I'm looking at Charlotte, and I don't want to go to Charlotte. So he hasn't worked out as a top 4 with the top 4 teams, and he views himself as a top 3 player. There's actually a little bit more logic to this than I think has been explained in some of these articles. Now, if you're Utah, do you want to bring him in? Sure. Do I promise you the Jazz are going to get a phone call with him? Of course they will. Marcus Smart didn't come work out in Utah. Quinn Snyder told us 5 years later when Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year over Rudy Gobert, he talked to Marcus Smart for 3 or 4 hours the night before the draft, just to get a feel for him. Said he loved him. And the Jazz would have taken him. They just thought Dante Exum was better. So, it's lying season. There's a lot of smoke out there. If you think Ace Bailey's the best player in the draft, who cares if you worked him out? You've watched him since he was 15 years old. You watched him play against juniors, seniors, under 18, Olympic qualifiers, et cetera, all this stuff, all these tournaments, all American tournaments, every single game at Rutgers, and more. You've talked to him at the Combine. If you're comfortable drafting him, I don't care if he works out for you. All right, what's next?
Number 2, big weekend for BYU and Utah. We got a couple of 5-star prospects coming to visit.
Notably, Ryder Lyons joining or visiting BYU, a 5-star quarterback, and apparently intrigued by the idea of BYU being quarterback university historically, and rightfully so. BYU has done a great job with quarterbacks, including having number 2 overall pick in the last decade in Zach Wilson, and an opportunity to step in and probably start right away soon in the coming future for Ryder Lyons. And then Utah, perhaps more surprising here. I don't know, Christian, what do you think? Felix, is it Ojo?
The Huffman that was on with DJ and PK this morning was saying Ojo.
Ojo. Felix Ojo, the number 2 recruit in the state of Texas. Top 10 recruit overall in the country. A tackle coming to visit the University of Utah, which by itself is probably a good get. I would not expect Utah to get the top tackle coming out of the state of Texas. Now, if I want to give you a pathway how, it's that Utah is going to have potentially 2 first-round draft picks at tackle this year. They say, look at what our offensive line coach can do. Look at how good Harding's been historically. He turned these guys into first-round picks. He's going to turn you into the number 1 overall pick because everyone wants a tackle and you're the guy. And by the way, you're going to start your freshman season because Fano and Lomo are gone.
It's due diligence.
Yeah. So
that's
come
all
in.
it is.
Yeah, come in. Check the spot. I don't think you're limited on official visits anymore. Maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Not my area of expertise at the moment. But also, Utah's going to have $4 million to pay this kid, plus whatever NIL you can get, because you can justify it as the top tackle in the country or one of the top 2 tackles in the country. So that's where it's interesting. Am I betting on him to join Utah? No. Sometimes, though, the guy who takes the weird outlier visit, you say, why would he go there? There's actually general interest there.
It's why any quarterback prospect, they visit with USC because Kiffin has put guys in the NFL, and that's what Utah's doing. That's why every DB prospect visits Utah. It's what they do. They are putting guys in the NFL at this position. So, yeah, if this kid's ultimate goal is to go play in the NFL, go to the school that's been producing NFL-level offensive linemen.
Yeah, and why, if you're a quarterback, you should visit BYU. They've shown that they have, A, the ability to get you to the NFL, and B, the ability to pay you. And that's what these kids are looking for right now. I'd love to see them both. I'd love to see them both land up in our state. I'd love to see the fourth-ranked quarterback in the class end up at BYU. I'd love to see the top or second-ranked tackle in the class end up at Utah. It would be fun to see both of these teams start to get in on more of those players, these five-star players, going forward. All right, number 3.
Number 3, back to the NBA Finals. OKC has Indiana on the ropes.
Unfortunately, if this ends in 6, I think we might all say the Pacers were who we thought they were. And that's not accurate at all. Nobody thought the Pacers were going to win 2 games in the NBA Finals this year. Nobody thought that the Pacers were going to be up in the fourth quarter of Game 4 at home with a chance to take a 3-1 lead and put all the pressure on Oklahoma City to win 3 straight to close out the series. So I want to make sure we give the Pacers their due, that they are so far batting above what was expected for where they were coming into the season, even after a conference finals run last year. And they are a cool team, and they're a fun team, and they're a team full of very likable players. There's not a villain. Maybe in this series overall, I could see Lou Dort developing to a villain if we get fatigue of the Oklahoma City Thunder because they're at the top of the NBA for the next 3 or 4 seasons, and he has some dirty fouls or some physical fouls or somebody gets hurt.
You mean like the Draymond Green heel type?
Exactly right. There's not really a heel in this series. I don't think there is. I like all the players on the Pacers. TJ McConnell could develop into that. Alex Caruso could develop into that. But truthfully, those seem like very likable players. Dort is a very likable player, and they all have fun stories. And they're not publicly villains, which I don't, by the way, Draymond Green wanting to be a public villain is good for the NBA. It's not maybe good for Rudy Gobert, but it's good for the NBA, and it draws attention to the league. And maybe actually these teams could use a little bit more spice. But I do want to make sure that if the Pacers don't survive, Wednesday night, going back to Indiana, Thursday, we got another long gap, which is actually probably good for the Pacers because we'd give Tyrese Halliburton an extra day off to rest that calf and whatever injury he's dealing with. But I hope we can hold them in some high regard where rings matter. It's what everyone's chasing. It's why the Jazz are doing what they're doing right now. But rings culture has also ruined the ability to celebrate the also-rans that were also great teams. And this is a very fun Pacers team.
This is a Pacers team that everybody was picking OKC in 4 or 5 games.
Right. So they had a chance legitimately for a knockout punch in Game 4 to go up 3-1 and just didn't get it done. And then lost Game 5 in OKC. And you know what? Put up a better fight in OKC than I expected last night, period. I mean, it was a 2-point game with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And the Thunder go on a 5-0 run, get it back to 8, and then explodes to 15 in no time, which is what the Pacers or what the Thunder can do. The Thunder have that ability to turn you over, get transition baskets, and change the game quickly. So I hope the Pacers win Game 6. I hope we get a Game 7 and put all the pressure back on OKC and see how they respond. They have not failed in those areas yet this season. All right. When we come back, we'll continue to break down the wide world of sports. We will talk about the Thunder coming up at 11:05. Andre Schultz is going to join us. He covers the Thunder for The Athletic. What is their pathway looking like? And then very excited, 11:30, Katie Benson, the new general manager for the Salt Lake City Stars, is going to join us. I think the youngest general manager in the G League. So she's going to join us coming up, breaking down what her new role is and then actually how she factors in with the Jazz in the draft as well. Stick around. More Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Very happy to Tuesday to everybody out there. Hey, coming up tomorrow, Jake Scott going to be back on the show, making his triumphant return after Lloyd suspended him for 7 straight shows. What did he call you? I can't believe he called you that. No, Jake's been on vacation. Excited to have him back. Usually he does this after the draft, but
Forced vacation.
Yeah, but he did this one after the draft. You know what? I'm fascinated more and more as I read into this Ace Bailey story of not working out with teams. Again, it's like, is he not working out with the San Antonio Spurs? Maybe. And the Spurs probably want to bring him in. Like, you should do your due diligence, right? Like, you've got no reason not to. You've got a day. You're making a potentially $100 million investment in this player, right? I mean, if you're drafting number 2 overall, by the end of their contract, which you're hoping to be 5 years long, their rookie deal, they're making 10, 11, 12 million bucks at least. So you're talking about 5 years, $50, $60 million. You're already committed at that point. And if they work out, you're paying them a max deal.
Also, who's to say the Spurs are picking it too?
Right, and who's to say the Spurs are picking it too? Because the Jazz call up and say, Lauri Markkanen, 5 for 2 and your worst contracts. Call it a day. And at the very least, again, the Spurs should do their due diligence and say, well, that's interesting. What if the guy we actually think is as good at 2 as Dylan Harper and might fit our team better in Ace Bailey is going to be there at 5? And we'd love to work him out, but he's not going to work out for us at 2. Well, now we're frustrated about it, and we're going to tell Jonathan Givony that we're frustrated about it. And then the report is, well, Ace Bailey's not working out with people in his draft range. Also, define draft range. That's the other part of this. What's his draft range? 3 and 4? Is it 3, 4, 5? Does the Brooklyn Nets at 8 think that he's in their draft range? Do the Hornets think that, or not the Hornets, the Pelicans think that he's in their draft range at 7? And he says, no, I'm not. I know I'm not falling past 6 in the Washington Wizards, or I know I'm not falling past 5 in the Jazz. And now the Wizards are like, why can't we get a workout with him? And he says, well, I have a promise, or I know for sure I'm not going further than 5. And again, this is all speculation on my part. I've not heard that about the Jazz. I suspect the Jazz, I know the Jazz talked to him at the draft, like that, or at the combine. That's what every team does. You meet with everybody. You get a chance to talk to everybody. But yes, some of these details you just have to question a little bit. You have to push back on a little bit if you're a Jazz fan.
Yeah, it's lying season, as you said, and you got to take all of these reports with a grain of salt, and you never know who's leaking what, for what purpose. I mean, these things are leaked for a reason, and that's the thing to kind of keep in mind. Like, there's a reason that this stuff is coming out. Somebody wants it out there.
And again, Jazz have scouts in the areas where Rutgers are. I'm sure Danny's gone and seen him. I'm sure Justin's gone and seen him. I'm sure Austin has gone and seen him. I'm not really on a first-name basis with those guys, but I'm going to use their first names, and you know who I'm talking about. And they go to Rutgers, and sometimes they can sit on practice. Or they go early to the game. And before the game, after Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey work out, they stop by and they talk to the Jazz. And they introduce themselves and say, hey, this. And Jazz talk and get a feel for him. On the off chance that they can't get a workout with him before the draft. And I would also note that some guys don't work out that early. Because if you twist an ankle in a workout, you can't work with anyone else, The Jazz haven't gotten everybody else that they're going to work out in yet. The Jazz aren't done doing workouts.
There's still, 7, 8 days until the draft?
Aaron Gordon, I think, worked out for the Jazz the day before the draft. Maybe it was 2 days before the draft on his second workout. I'm not sure anything we're seeing with Ace Bailey is actually unique, other than it's just being reported right now.
And as you said, somebody always has to fall. And this year, this cycle, it's just Ace Bailey that's been chosen as the guy.
And I still think he's going to go in the top 4. I still don't think he's going to be on the board for the Jazz at 5. But if he is and the Jazz like him, I think they'll take him. Win Ticket Wednesday tomorrow. Win big every Wednesday on the KSL Sports Zone. This Wednesday, win tickets to Monster Jam, the World Finals, coming up July 4th and 5th at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Don't miss the biggest Monster Jam event of the year, with the finals coming to Utah for the first time. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Listen to KSL Sports Zone all day Wednesday for your chance to win. I've seen Monster Jam. I've seen it over at Delta Center. It's a smaller arena. I would bet going up to Rice-Eccles and having a football field would be incredible. Hatch is saying he's going to be there, not celebrating either not celebrating our country on July 4th or celebrating it with monster trucks, which might be the best way to do it. Bring your own monster truck.
About as American as you can get.
That's about as American as you can get right now. I'm pretty into that. So anyways, tomorrow we're going to be giving away tickets to the Monster Jam World Finals coming up at Rice-Eccles. All right, when we come back, we will continue to talk about the NBA and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Andre Schultz is going to join us breaking down what he's seen from OKC on the verge of a championship and what does their future look like. Plus, they've got a draft pick, so they've got a lot going on. We'll talk about that. Coming up next, stick around. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.